Now it's my pleasure to introduce literally one of my favorite people in the whole world, a long time friend and a mentor to me, David Mineo. David Mineo serves as the managing director of DLMineo Consulting and has over 40 years of experience in the federal sector, academia, and consulting, where he has led teams of higher performance and quality improvements. At DLMineo Consulting, he is responsible for both business development and the delivery of services to clients from higher education to research to public service firms. In his practice area, David specializes in leadership development and coaching, communication and team building, as well as grants administration and research compliance and related services. He is also responsible for developing and managing teaming relationships needed to serve clients in the private as well as government areas. I want to say that when Dave and I met, he was Chief Grants Management Officer at one of the institutes at NIH. And when I went through one of the most difficult situations I've ever encountered in research administration, David was there for me. I was able to call on him and draw from his expertise. And had he not been there for me at that time, I'm not sure I would have remained in research administration. I mean, he was that valuable to me. And this was over 20 years ago. So I thank him for being there, being my friend, being a mentor and an advisor at that time. And I've never stopped learning from him. And it is my extreme pleasure this morning to share my friend with you as he shares his expertise with all of us. So let's welcome David Mineo.
That concludes our presentation today. So thank you for coming. No, thank you, Jennifer. That was very, very kind of you. And you know, the thing is that while someone might be able to provide you with a little bit of thoughts, it's still up to you to implement them. And she did, and she is now blaming me for her staying in research administration. I just saw Celeste live, and I saw a halo over her head. So I'm very pleased that she's now really an angel. I started talking to Jennifer about this presentation on resilience back in October of this year. And one of the things that I've come across in just about every walk of life, including some of my coaching, is people talking about resilience and overcoming some of the stresses, the many stresses we're having, and especially the stresses we've had in the last 2 years. I really started getting interested in resilience after a very tough setback. I had applied for a job, which, you know, happens to all of us. I thought I was clearly the best candidate. I had the skill set, I had the diversity of experiences, everything else, and I got passed over. And this was back at a time when a lot of people's success just happened because of longevity. They stayed in a position for a long period of time, and next person up was the one that got hired instead of maybe someone that had a greater diversity and stuff. And that setback really bothered me. I was told about it on a Friday afternoon. I went home. I wallowed in my sorrow and sadness about not getting the job, and felt, you know, that somehow I'd been passed over unfairly. And over the next 2 days, I really, you know, felt that I'd been wronged and stuff. And that Sunday evening, I promised myself I was going to move forward. I wasn't going to dwell on it. I was going to use it to help me, and I did. Now, don't ask me why I used that approach, but one of the things that I saw recently is something about how people tend to deal with resilience, and it has to do with their mindset. And somebody, and I can't remember the name of the person that was writing this article, talked about two mindsets: a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. A fixed mindset obviously is one where you believe that you were born with the skills you have. Those skills are what you rely on, and you're only gonna go so far. A growth mindset says that based on education, based on experience, based on various activities that have happened in my life, I can use those to help me grow and prosper. Just a couple of other things that have happened since that time. 9/11. 9/11 was a devastating day. And we were at the end of the year, and everybody went home. When the second plane hit the Twin Towers, I was talking to my staff, and we were watching it on small TV, and I said, "We're now at war." And literally we were. And it was important that my staff not lose focus, because there were a lot of universities and stuff relying on us to be the same. So I got everybody in the room. We started talking about how we could overcome this. And fortunately, we had a great, successful close of the fiscal year. And it allowed people probably out in the field to think, well, things aren't changing that much, even though we know that 20 years later, they did change a lot. Right when COVID hit, I was getting ready to do a project on a 5-year strategic plan. I had signed the contract and everything. I went to talk to folks at the university that day, and as I was getting ready to leave, they said, "We've just been ordered to close down the university, and we're not going to reopen it because of the COVID and all the activities happening there." And that was another thing that required me to make adjustments and become a little more resilient, how we dealt with it. We made changes to the project plan, and ultimately we met every one of the deadlines and came away with a strategic plan that the university, or the college that I was helping, loved and is implementing now, and very happy with. So the whole concept of resilience resonated with me most appropriately when I went to a program at the Center for Creative Leadership, which is in Greensboro, North Carolina. And during the course, I met a psychologist and a Navy SEAL. And his job was to help SEALs recover from setbacks that occur in the field when they're doing operations. And if you stop and think about it, how fast someone can come back from a setback really determines in the long run how successful they can be. So my intention here is to really try to help you get to thinking about the whole concept of resilience, and to give you a few tools to help you move forward as you face some of these things. This slide that's up there now, it says resilience is not a single skill. It's a variety of skills and coping mechanisms to bounce back from bumps in the road, as well as failures. You should focus on emphasizing the positive. Now, what's important here is that it's not a single skill. It's life skills. It's the things that have happened to you. Bumps in the road and failures happen to all of us. And the last comment there about emphasizing the positive is extremely, extremely important if you're going to overcome things. And I think we've seen some of that in some of the activities that have happened in today's world. Can we go to the next slide? There we are. So the way we're going to do this is we're going to talk about the definition of resilience, because I'd like to make sure we're all on the same page on what we're really talking about here. What are some of the critical elements of overcoming resilience? And how do you really develop those resilience? How do you build a resilient mindset in today's world? Next slide. So, can we put the poll question up first? I just realized that Elizabeth, do I do the poll question or there we are. So I want to ask you, how many of you have changed jobs in the last 2 years? So if you look at the answer here, can everybody see it? I got a little thing that says stop sharing, but I'm still sharing. The question, have you changed jobs over the last 2 years? Nearly half of you have had new jobs over the last 2 years. In a time when resilience is important, being able to adapt to your job changes is important as well. One of the things I didn't ask is how many of those were voluntary and how many of those were not involuntary. But and I'm not going to dwell on that. But certainly an involuntary job change forces you to use different skills for resilience than one that where you have done it voluntarily. And it can also deal with your mindset as you're making that change. I'm going to stop the poll and go back to the resilience question now. So how do we define resilience? Well, if you look at the dictionary, it says the capability of a strained body to recover its size and shape after deformation caused especially by compressive stress. If you think of a stress ball that you squeeze and then you let go, it bounces back to its previous shape. There are other activities that do the same thing. An ability to recover from or adjust easily to a misfortune or change. I don't like the word easily because I think that there actually is a process that you go through that isn't as easy as it seems. And if you look at the American Psychological Association, they define resilience as the process of adapting well in the face of adversity, trauma, tragedy, threats, significant force, such as family and relationships, problems in the workplace, financial stressors. So let's go on to the next slide, and let's delve into this just a little bit more. I always like to put a few of these quotes in here to help people think that they're not the only ones that have gone through this. Resilience is knowing that you are the only one that has the power and the responsibility to pick yourself up. Now, Mary Holloway was an English athlete years ago, and this was her view of resilience. And obviously, when someone goes through, let's say, a loss of a sport or something like that, they have to dig into their inner self to pick themselves up and move forward again. And what does that require? to overcome it. It requires, let's say, greater training, harder work, saying how can I get another extra second out of this race I'm in or whatever. But it's overcoming a disruptive force. And I use the word disruptive force because it covers a lot of territory, and I think it's a little more vibrant than simply the word failure. Something just got in the way, and it's there, but you can overcome that. Next slide. So we talk about adversity. We talk about adversity, hardships, challenges, and hardships, challenges, misfortunes. An example of adversity might be poverty. When we talk about trauma, there are actually a number of different kinds of trauma. There's acute trauma, which results from a single incident that's occurred in your life. There's chronic trauma, which is repeated and prolonged trauma, such as domestic violence or abuse. And there's complex trauma, which is exposure to multiple forms of trauma, often invasive and interpersonal nature. Obviously, tragedy is a crime or something of that nature. And threats of significant sources of stress, statements of intention to inflict pain, injury, damage, or a hostile action on someone for retribution. One of the quotes I saw the other day is, "You can't discipline kids out of trauma." And the idea that we can, when a kid has a bad setback, we can simply suggest that they, get over it or something like that. That's what happened in years past when I was a junior grant specialist. If something happened that was a setback, it was just get over it, go on, move on. Or, in some instances, when something happened you didn't like, the boss would say, "Well, if you don't like it, you can go somewhere else." Well, those days are long gone, I hope. And we have to realize that we have to help one another. Let's put up the next poll question because it gets into some of the sources of adversity that have happened. What does resilience have to do with our lives? What has been the two biggest sources of life disruption you have faced in the last 2 years? I'm going to end the poll here. Not unexpectedly, the pandemic is cited as one of the most difficult ones. It's 70%, or nearly 70%. And then family stress. And I wonder how much family stress is related to the fact that of working from home and not being able to get out of the house and things like that and stuff. Next is job change. So 25% cited job change. 4% cited job loss. 14% unexpected financial burden. So, again, those are the kind of threats and things that occur that call us to build our resilience and stuff. And I hope this session will give you a little bit of thought for how you might do that. I'm sorry. One of the responses was somebody could not see the poll, and I don't know what occurred there, but I apologize for that. Next slide. Our greatest weakness lies in our giving up. The most certain way to succeed is always to try just one more time. Now, in order to invent the light bulb, Edison failed 10,000 times, he says. And he says he did not fail. I found 10,000 ways that just don't work. Now, that's a positive view of what some might say is a terrible activity. And another thing he said is just because something doesn't do what you planned, it doesn't mean it is useless. Also, one of the things that people might not know is that Thomas Edison had over 1,000 patents that he developed over the years. So he was a pretty powerful inventor, and as can be seen, he had a lot of setbacks and probably built up some pretty good resilience over the years as a result of that. Next slide. So I want to start talking now about some of the things that are necessary to be resilient. One of the things that help us with our resilience is having competence. Another is confidence, connection, character, contribution, coping, and control. Competence is certainly having skills and abilities in a specific field or subject and being able to do something well. Confidence is having the self-assuredness that rise out of one's appreciation and one's own abilities and qualities. So confidence and competence go hand in hand. Somebody has asked a question of how do you gain that competence and confidence when someone is putting you down all the time, and I think that confidence comes internally. Sometimes when you get pushed backwards, that's certainly not going to help you gain that confidence. But what you have to do is call upon your inner strength to be able to recognize that you really are doing a good job, or ask the question of how do I overcome that? We're getting a few questions here, and I'd like to hold those to the end, and I promise you that we're holding 10 minutes at the end, and we'll address many of those questions. But don't stop them from coming. Just realize I might not answer them at this moment in time. Connectivity. Connection means being fully aware of the here and now, fully in touch with what is happening in this moment. Mindfulness is a product of connection as well. So I just wanted to point that out, that mindfulness is something we're going to see come up here a little bit later, and is important to building connection and things. Having character. Character is a trait or quality of high moral code. Trustworthiness is one. And I think what you have to think about is when you're talking about character, you're really talking about people of high character. There are people that have character, but it's not necessarily the kind of character you want. Contribution. The part played by a person or thing in bringing about results, helping something to advance, knowing that you're making a contribution to society. And I would say that everybody involved in research administration, education at higher education institutes, hospitals, research foundations are contributing to the greater good of society. I used to tell my staff that, if they don't get awards out on time, investigators can't do their research. If investigators can't do their research, then how are we to make contributions? So it was always important that we did our part, even though it might not be the patenting of the idea. It's one of the things that's extremely important for people to recognize, that they do contribute to the greater good of society. And I know that research has been getting kind of a bum rap lately because of the idea that things are not, something might be disproven or not researched enough. Well, we're living in a time when I was shocked that they could get a vaccine out in 9, 10 months. Having been involved in research administration and studies, I was of the opinion that it would take 8 or 9 years. And so when it happened, I said, sign me up. I'm happy to contribute to society that way. But again, the whole premise of mask or unmask, and I don't mean to get into that. There's a lot more at play there than simply the research. And, the viruses change faster than I think scientists can keep up with what's going on. That doesn't mean research is bad. Coping. People that have a wide repertoire of coping skills, social skills, stress reduction skills, etc., can cope more effectively and are better prepared at overcoming life challenges. A characteristic of often automatic action or set of actions taken in dealing with stressful and threatening situations. I'll just say that yesterday morning I got up and my wife called me and she was sitting downstairs at the bottom of the stairs. And I said, what's happening? And she says, I'm feeling bad. And she didn't want to go to the hospital, but I took her to the hospital. I didn't take her. I called 911 and we got her to the hospital. And she was having a spell with AFib and her had extremely high heart rate. Due to the number of COVID cases that have gone into the hospital, they didn't want to keep her there, but they were originally going to. They wound up doing a cardioversion on her, and she's home now, doing very well. It changed my day yesterday for sure, but I had to cope with it because if I didn't, what kind of husband am I? And it turns out that she's in great shape now. Got to go to the doctor, but again, it was one of those things that we were able to overcome quickly. And control, being able to exercise restraint over things and regulate one's control of anger is an important characteristic as well. Next slide. Now, in dealing with resilience and building resilience, I want to go back to the 7 C's, and I want to make a connectivity between 10 ways to build resilience and making connection, and these 10 ways to build resilience and the 7 C's that I pointed out earlier. So making connections, what does that relate back to? It relates back to connections. People are related to your success just as much as outside influences. Having individuals that you can call on to help you from time to time is really important. And you gain those things over experiences, meeting new people, finding out what the people have to say and being very mindful of what they have to say is important in making connections. Avoid seeing crisis as insurmountable problems. Everything in life is temporary, except the end. And sometimes when we're going through something, it seems like we're never going to get to the other side. I have a slide at the end that we won't focus on, but or I don't that I also wanted to say that Winston Churchill once said, "When you're going through hell, just keep going." And one of the things we have to realize is that when our children have a crisis or a problem, that they don't have the length of time experience that we have. And so 1 year to them seems like a lifetime. 1 year to us, I'm going to tell you, I'm fairly old. And one of the things I said when I retired from the federal government was the days go slow, but the years go fast. And we have to realize that everything we do, when we impact on others, when we help others, that's our legacy. And I hope that you can recognize that. Accept the change is a part of living. Life would get pretty boring if we didn't really have much change in our life. And this, if you stop and think about it, while COVID has not been a good thing and we're still dealing with it, it has changed the work setting some. It's allowed people to do certain things that in the routine workplace they'd never allow you to do. I mean, work at home is one of those things that, I wasn't a big fan of that because I love people. and being able to interact with people on a personal level is much different than being able to look at a computer screen or something else and talk to them. But I understand the reason for it, and I understand that it's important. And I think that what we have to do is realize that we've changed the way we work. I should say work and play, and I'm not sure I like the play part, but the work part is important. Move towards your goals, and that's contribution. That goes back to the C of contribution. Take decisive actions. Again, taking decisive actions requires you to have some confidence. Look for opportunities for self-discovery. Excuse me. That goes to the coping in the C's. Nurture a positive view of yourself. Character. Again, the word positive is so important there. Keep things in perspective. And that's got to do with competence. Being able to see things and understand what they are, and being able to keep them in a proper place. Maintain a hopeful outlook. That's positivity, character. And take care of yourself. It's got to do with coping skills. Next slide. Mindfulness is something that we have to pay attention to. And I love this slide mostly because of the statement there. I'm mindful that my butt hurts, and I also think it's going to rain. The statement there is one that says, "Yep, I'm mindful of what's going on," and mindfulness is not taking things for granted. Mindfulness means to return to the present moment. And mindfulness is self-regulation of attention with an attitude of curiosity, openness, and acceptance. Now, some of you that know me know I enjoy playing golf. And one of the things that I've found is when I get in the present, when I'm hitting a golf shot, I tend to hit a much better shot than when I just get up there and swing the club. If I stop and think about the shot, visualize what I'm going to do, and then take the club back, swing, practice once, and then hit the shot, I usually hit a better shot. Unfortunately, over the years, I didn't practice that kind of um, mindfulness. So staying in the moment for me was always difficult. And I'll be honest with you, as a supervisor, when you get into a supervisory position, many times you're thinking about the next thing you got to do. And it's hard to maintain that mindfulness. But I think employees and our coworkers enjoy us much better when we are mindful of what's going on. And again, I think that's something that we have to train in ourselves. In my coaching practice, one of the sessions that we do is the issue of getting in the moment and staying in the moment and being with the person you're with and not the person that's 10 feet away. So I want to suggest to supervisors and team leaders that they really, really think through when they're dealing with an employee and make sure that that employee knows you're about them when you're with them. Unfortunately, many of these skills that we talk about take years to cultivate. And when we gain the experience, by the time we gain the experience, sometimes we're past our prime and not in a position to really help. So as you're younger, I really want you to think about the time it takes to build up the skills necessary to be successful. Let's go to the next slide. So what are some of the skills of resilience? Self-awareness, attention, flexibility, and stability of focus, letting go physically, letting go mentally, and accessing and sustaining positive emotion. Self-awareness is obviously the conscious knowledge of one's own character, feelings, motives, and desires. So what drives you? What's really important to you? What are the things that are going to help you get to where you want to get to? Attention and flexibility of focus. The active power of fixing the mind on something, carefully listening and watching, paying attention to what happens next. Carefully thinking about something so as to be able to take action on the matter that requires immediate attention. Letting go physically involves stepping back from painful experiences. If you remember, I talked about the experience of a job, not getting a job, and how I kind of wallowed in it. Yeah, I mean, you go through the stages of anger, denial, etc., the grief stages, and stepping back and doing that in a way that is objective is much better for you over time. The ability to observe our mind means that we can develop a certain curiosity about our experience rather than take our thoughts and feelings to be the truth. Think about that. I mean, when we get so wrapped up in something that we can't let it go, we believe we know the answer of why something happened, or what something's all about. Unless we find out what truth really is, the truth really is, we'll never know that. And the best way to be able to do that is to step back and be able to separate yourself from what happened and see, how do I move forward from it? Letting go mentally. One of the best ways to heal from hurt is to learn lessons from the situation and use those to focus on growth and forward momentum. If we get stuck in thinking about what should have been, we can become immobilized in painful feelings and memories. So we'll never go to what can be. And I think that goes back to the fixed mindset versus the growth mindset that I talked about earlier. And then the last one is accessing and sustaining positive emotion. Um, Researcher Barbara Fredrickson, in her book Positivity, presents what she believes is a fairly comprehensive list of 10 positive emotions: love, joy, gratitude, serenity, interest, amusement, pride, hope, awe, and inspiration. If you live your life with those thoughts, you can overcome a heck of a lot. I also want to mention a book that you might want to get. It's a great book. It's called The Happiness Advantage, and it's by a guy by the name of Sean Achor. He is a researcher at Harvard, and if you just want to get a quick view of that, he does a TED talk. You can find it on YouTube, and just Google The Happiness Advantage. And I think you'll find it to be very interesting, and I think it's very helpful to live a life of happiness and gratitude rather than one where you're feeling you're being put upon and hurt. Next slide. Resilience is very different from being numb. Resilience means you experience, you feel, you fail, you hurt, you fall, but you keep going. And this is an American educator and researcher. And I think it's important that you realize that resilience doesn't mean you're not going to experience negative feelings. It means that you have to be able to overcome those feelings and move forward. And I think it's such an important thing. Next slide. So I mentioned the Center for Creative Leadership, and I saw this, and I thought that it was worthwhile to show the steps in building a resilient mindset. It's accepting change, becoming a continuous learner. Again, that's a growth view. Taking charge of yourself, finding your sense of purpose, paying attention to your self's identity, cultivating relationships. There's a notice that relationships and connectivity are always in there. Reflection. Again, reflection and mindfulness, I think, go hand in hand. And then ultimately a skill shift in your ability to deal with that. Next slide. This quote I find interesting. Do not judge me by my success. Judge me by how many times I fell down and I got back up again. I think that's just a statement of the way life occurs to us. There are always going to be setbacks, always, or disruptions, or something else that causes you to have to make adjustments in your life. And again, the point here is not how many times you experience success, but how many times you get back up when you have a setback. Next slide. Now, at the beginning, you might have saw a dog picture and thought, what the heck does that have to do with resilience? And I think if you have the resilience of a dog, you're going to have the ability to get over almost anything. 5 points here. They don't fixate on the past. They use their past trauma to grow and help others. I mean, you ever see a dog? A dog doesn't seem sad. It seems like it's living in the moment all the time. They don't let anything slow them down. A setback. That's just saw a slide. So true. Dogs wake up happy every morning. Yeah, that's because they're waiting for their food. A setback or a disability doesn't mean they stop exploring or living. And they show us that every person deserves to be loved. So I think that if you live your life like that, you're going to have a pretty good life. Next slide. The ultimate measure of, I've adjusted this slightly. It's a statement by Martin Luther King. The ultimate measure of a human is not where he or she stands in moments of comfort and convenience, but where he or she stands in times of challenge and controversy. And I think you could also say in times of setbacks, and that would still apply appropriately. Now, I promised 10 minutes to answer questions and stuff, and I noticed that some of you answered my question, the questions that I got already, which is great. But let's go on to the next slide, and I just want to make sure that I say something about acknowledgement. So, building your resilience from the American Psychological Association is one of my sources. Center for Creative Leadership in Greensboro, North Carolina, and then work of a pediatrician at Children's Hospital is where the 7 C's of resilience comes from. With that, let's go on to questions for a few minutes. I guess
we've had a really active chat going on, Dave. People, mostly just people endorsing comments that you made that resonated with them. I think that it was very telling that we saw that 58% of folks were, 70% said the pandemic, of course, is bothering them, but almost 60% said that family strain it has really been a problem. And one person noted in the comments that she'd lost her husband recently, and another person said that they felt that the competence was being sucked out of them. So if you could address some of those things, I think that then we'll come to the comments that are lower down.
Okay. I passed over the question. I happened to see the question about the loss, and certainly I think the way things have been happening lately, many people have suffered losses, personal losses and tragedies in their life with the loss of loved ones and things. And those are things, life occurrences that we have to move through. And I think that, doing it yourself makes it that much harder. I think if you have a pastor or someone else that you can call upon, if you have a life coach or someone that you trust and value, you could approach them and talk to them, talk through some of the things. The loss of a loved one should, and I'm not a psychologist or anything. I think it's obviously one of the hardest things that we go through. But being able to recognize the positive sides of your experience with that individual is a healthier way to look at it and think about the loss you suffered. Think about the things that you gained by having that person in your life. Looks at it in a kind of a different mindset. And I hope that provides some thought. I think there again, are resources out there that can help you. And again, finding a counselor, somebody just mentioned a note of that, is worthwhile. So many people are going through these kinds of experiences right now, and please, I hope you can think about the positive. If you I offer myself. I'll be happy to talk to you. Like I said, I'm not a psychologist, but I can understand the loss of loved ones, because I've lost people in my life, and I always try to think about the positive aspects that person brought to my life and left in my heart, because that's how that person lives on. They live on by your keeping them alive.
That's
I hope
true.
that helps.
That's true. And there's a difference between thinking about a person, having memories about a person, and ruminating. And you talked about, living in the present. A lot of we're older, and so we've just, by nature of being older, we've experienced more loss than some of the younger folks that might be on here. But during COVID, a lot of people have experienced loss early in their life, and and I think in a way that is not natural. It's just not natural to be experiencing loss. And then with all the strain that has occurred, not all losses have been due to physical, but people have had a lot of mental health issues as well. Nicole Thompson, Ashton Keys, and several others have gotten on, and Debbie Snyder have all gotten on and said, seek counseling. And if you have an EAP program at your institution, I've had to access it when I've gone through difficult times, and it really helped, even if it's just a few sessions, just to be able to talk to someone. It has been my experience, and get past the ruminating to positive memories.
Jennifer, could I just talk about the offer I have for people?
Yes.
Can we move to the next slide? So I just, before I get out of here, and we only have a few more minutes, I want you to note that I'm a facilitator of a tool called Everything DISC Workplace and 5 Behaviors of Cohesive Team. And I'm a Sherpa trained coach, executive coach. And in there, I'm offering, and again, you can take advantage of it if you want. It's up to you personally. It's I just offer this to those that might want to explore this a little bit more. These are tools, personality tools for interacting with people in the workplace. One of them's Everything DISC Workplace. One of them's Everything DISC Management. And I'm offering a 10% discount to anybody that wants to take it. You'll get this online, and I'm offering it through March 31st. If you're interested, fine. If you're not, that's fine as well. I just thought it was something that I could offer. I noticed Miriam Campo is on the call, and I actually did a workplace team building activity for their office, and they seem to enjoy it, and helps people's interactions. And again, that has to do with connections and making those connections in our workplace. So if there's any other comments, I'm happy to have it. It's right at 10 o'clock almost.
Well, and Dave, I want to thank you for offering this. We've taken advantage of Dave coming and helping with our team. We spend a lot more time, oftentimes, with our work colleagues than we do with our own families, and so having a healthy team environment is very important. We appreciate that. We're going to push out the offer with the resources when they come out. So, but thank you so much for doing that, and thank you so much for your presentation today. As you can see, the comments, the chat's blowing up with people saying how valuable this was to them. This session has been recorded, and I encourage you not only to watch it again when you need to watch it, everyone, but also to share it with others, because we all need to be reminded of what we need to do to make ourselves more resilient. And it's a very timely topic. And Dave, I can't tell you how much more appreciative I am knowing that you're coping right now with what you just went through with your precious wife, and a lot of thoughts and prayers are going her way.
Well,
thank you for mentioning it this morning.
okay. And I just want to say thank you for letting me be part of your life, all of you. I hope in some small way this does help you build resilience and cope with the many things we're experiencing today.
Thank you.